Welcome back to the official RCiv Battle Royale, Part 52, Rising Tides, Crashing Skies. Good day, Civilization Status, and welcome to the 52nd installment of the Civilization 5 Battle Royale. I am Sandpeople, your host for this week. Last time we checked in, the underdog Kimberley were pounding their Sri Lankan aggressors, and the Trungs, leading Vietnam, continued to march their thousands into Afghanistan, and the Hawaiians were faced with two very concerning declarations of war from the Blackfoot and Chile. Now we enter yet another part, and like always, we want blood. Thanks to you, Candolinian, for his spooky rendition of the future Kruger looking over his Boer Empire. Another thing worth noting is that UJRU2467 has released their newest part of the ongoing CBR comics series, The Loser Circle. Check it out here. Before we begin, feast your eyes on the elegant city map for turn 533, crafted with the blood, sweat, and tears of Laxarascal Risco and company in order for us civophiles to enjoy each part even more than we already do. Do yourself a favor and take a minute to enjoy the immense detail in full resolution. Now for a relationship guide by you, Mazer Laser. It may be handy to have this one on your second monitor if you forget who's fighting who. A surprise to no one, I'm sure, though the deviation is a bit high, the ever-advancing Boer nation leads Part 51's power rankings with their immense landmass and constantly growing military. Despite a huge army throughout the entire nation, one could imagine that Boer land is a nice place to live, what with the beaches upon beaches and tropical islands. I myself am somewhat of a closet Boer fan, and considering their kindness to the last of our Ashanti brethren, but enough about the Boers. Let's resume the battle. We kick off this part with a nice view of the Blackfoot heartland. Crowfoot's Blackfoot soldiers are not far behind the world's powerhouses tech-wise, with paratroopers beginning to crowd the countryside. If not for the looming Inuit threat to the north, I would go as far to say that the Blackfoot have a decent chance if they keep going the way they're going. A more urgent issue for the Blackfoot, however, is the stealthily placed Mexican citadel just west of the Great Lakes. While worrisome to the Blackfoot, it may not have been the best idea for Benito Juarez, as he now has a diplomatic penalty with the Crowfoot, along with 9 unmanned tiles ripe for pillaging. And without open borders with the Sioux, it may be a long time before he can transport any units there. On another note, there are a few Australian units digging around the Inuit territories in the northwest. An alliance between these two powers would, in very few circumstances, be a good thing for anything else in the world. Keep your eyes peeled for signs of an Inuit or Australian plot, because a double DOW would be devastating. A lone Sri Lankan frigate far from home faces the tired wrath of the Malayan naval remnants, while a Sri Lankan submarine sits under the ice, oblivious to its countrymen's dire situation. Mali's declaration of war against Parakrubabayu seemed just a symbolic act before, but maybe Masamusu picked the right battle this time. Here we are met with Henry Morgan's South American holdings, following a long two-front war with Inca and Brazil. The pirates' foothold runs deep, and you may notice 2 carefully placed Buccaneer citadels in Brazilian territory. Any more of those, and we could end up with another fun war on our hands. Meanwhile, a world-famous Icelandic rocker visits the Manus for the rock concert of the century. The cold of the deep south doesn't seem to bother Australian soldiers, as a decent-sized portion of their fleet sits in the water around their Antarctic holdings. It's a strategically good spot to store such a navy as Henry Parks might ever need to dispatch an offense against any South American nations, as you see Chilean waters off to the east. In support of their Aboriginal vassal in Kimbernesia, the Australian Parliament deemed it necessary to join against the aggressive Parakumabama, Sri Lanka. This certainly spells a bad time for all of Sri Lanka, as the Wabagong Armada are nothing to sniff at. Just look at what they have done to Indonesia alone. With this declaration comes the danger that a chain of DOWs could begin, and we all know how devastating that could be. Also worth noting, up to the north is the Blackfoot city of Olongapo that has fended off Hawaiian attackers for the most part. As hinted at in the last slide of Part 51, Kimberley destroyers have retaken what was rightfully theirs, the island city of Wollongara. Without a single Sri Lankan unit nearby the city, Jan Damara will be able to divert all focus to the Sri Lankan core, and with luck, knock out Apollo Karambahu Creed. Further to the north, you may notice that the Norwegian caravel on very low health, possibly even the last Norwegian unit. I'm not sure if Harkon is still at war with anyone, but if so, we may be witnessing Norway's final breath being taken. A decently sized portion of the ice sheet fleet is enjoying the other freezing cold part of the Earth, alongside Henry Park's home fleet. Inuit technological dominance is very evident as the best Australian naval unit looks to be a destroyer. Inuit's advanced destroyers seek refuge in Australia in order to repair and get back on sea. Referring back to the first slide, open borders in Australia are yet another possible sign the Inuit and the Aussies are becoming chums. After losing open borders with the Yakuts, a small chunk of the Boer army is now stranded in international waters, completely trapped by the Inuit and Yakut ocean borders. They are not alone, as they join the very lost Armenian riflemen in remote solitude. Also notice the coats of fallout everywhere, making the area near uninhabitable. It's a sorry sight that I can only say that Inuit needs to hire some people to manage the nuclear weapons. The Afghan cities of Khost, Lahore, and Kandahar are just as engulfed in flames as they were a turn ago, but this time a mechanized infantry is in position to take Khost. Paratroopers are just as present as they were before down by Lahore, but the Mongol cannon and crossbows are cutting off any melee units from entering Lahore. There's really nowhere for any units to move down there, Mongol ones included, so until the mountain range becomes a lot less congested, don't expect Lahore to fall. The mobile SAM and artillery on the other side of Lahore's mountains will keep the defenses down until that time comes. The pirate nuclear program continues to grow, and the numerous atomic bombs in Belize seem to be more or less pointed towards Tulum. We also grimace as a group of Firaxis-fueled helicopters sits in a boat outside Belize, unable to take off until it reaches land. I can't help but note that the Buccaneers are obviously the most diverse country in the CBR, with cities in South America, Central America, the Caribbean, Florida, Spain, and Africa, with city names like Port-au-Prince, Sao Luis, and Georgetown. The downfall of Buck culture will be a sad day for all. Here we see the Mexican Buccaneer border, and Henry Morgan of the Bucks has inherited two of the Maori's unique buildings, the POP. It boosts military production by 5% in Umalaxil, which seems small, but is actually pretty good for a city that just took a beating. This shot also shows that the Bucks have little care for land units. Their entire military focus is in the sea, with their navy. Umalaxil, despite belonging to the scary pirates, looked pretty good all in all, and would be a welcome addition to the Mexican Empire were Benito to act on its relative vacancy. Contrary to what I said back on slide 6, a Norwegian frigate still floats to the east of the Chilean Falkland Islands, accompanied by the remnants of two other eliminated civs. A Zulu worker, almost 200 turns after the annexation of the last Zulu city by the Boers, continues the Zulu culture, just colder. A submarine from a more freshly eliminated civ, the Maori, joins the abandoned brethren in just about the last place in the world anyone would look for them. A Finnish sympathizer, possibly even Kpiozoa himself, has the vote to reopen the trade to Finland shot down, with the help of 6 different eliminated civs. Surprisingly, the Mughals don't appear on that list, though that could just be due to a lack of delegates. In the background, the former Malayan Buccaneer cities smolder with nuclear fallout, and Haile Selassie of Ethiopia orders a citadel placed directly in between Yuxtik and the rest of Morocco. Ahmed al-Masua would do well to send more troops into his eastern holdings, as Sahara looks very empty right now. The other congressional vote successfully embargoes Brazil. $10 say that Henry Morgan led the charge, though there's no way to really know. We also see where the Mughal votes were, in favor of embargoing Brazil. I suppose the Mughals aren't one to hold grudges, even against the nation that wiped them out. In the background, we can see the core of Canada, and they don't look half bad. A coalition of Blackfoot and Canadian DOWs against the Inuit could possibly go their way. Don't hold your breath, though. Before we move on, take a moment to enjoy Medicine Hat up north. Okay, that's enough enjoying Medicine Hat. Even more Norwegian boats are up closer to their former homeland. However, the unfortunate privateer Caravel duo happened to run into the one fleet they needed to avoid. Now that the Swedes have Norwegian units in their sights, I doubt that they will be merciful. The Icelandic green and the blue are the only borders in sight, and with Iceland's open borders to Sweden, the Norwegians have nowhere to run. Our first look at the Hawaiian War, and we are met with a gruesome sight. The formerly 38 population city of Honolulu has been reduced to 15 by the Chileans, and the Chilean celebration of the occupation is surely dampened by the millions who lie dead in the street. Chilean admirals move away from the city in chaos, trying to remove the horrible images from their minds as they lay siege to Waikiki. The world will remember the day Honolulu fell, along with Bernardo O'Higgins, the villain behind it all. A local Hawaiian engineer opines for the loss of the city he was born in. Is there anything that's worth more than peace and love of the planet Earth? We return to the Sri Lankan Kimberley front, where Colombo looks to be well protected from Jandamara's navy. The few Kimberley ships lie left to protect Ser Jaya Warrendapura Koti from recapture. The war is quiet for now. However, the Australian Navy is moving towards Sri Lanka. However slowly, this war is far from over. An old declaration of war, long since forgotten by viewers, comes into the spotlight as the Inuit fleet in Australia has come to odds with a few of Jandamara's loose ships. It's a very odd situation for Australia, as they provide open borders to both belligerents and are even helping one in a war. But Parkes has not chosen a side. Henry Parkes seems to have his hand in everything, as he even has units in Yakutia. He has open borders with Yakutia, who just finished war with the Inuit, who he has open borders with. It will be interesting to see how it fits all into the Aussie Empire's master plan of world domination. I also couldn't help notice that there's a digger in the Yakut city of Andiabarik. How is that even possible? We can see here that the Yakut-Sibir War drags on, with the Mongol curtain preventing any melee fighting. Notice that the Yakuts now have power armor infantry, a feat only accomplished by the Inuit and Boers thus far. If the Yakuts can start to build their carpet back to what it was in the early game, they could very well become the powerhouse they once were. Another detail, the Mongols don't seem to have a single foreign unit within their borders. No open borders to anyone. It seems like Genghis Khan has blocked his entire nation off from the world. With the entrance of Brazil to the information era comes a view of the entirety of Brazil. Made obvious by their entrance to the information era, Brazil is not low on tech. With this full view of Brazil, I dare say that war with either the Bucks or Chile could end in Brazil's favor. And with the citadels up north, don't be surprised if Pedro decides to be the aggressor in this one. Little progress has been made by the Chilean fleet against Waikiki, though it seems that they've done their best to save the Hawaiians that remain in Honolulu, as the population stays at 15. A Hawaiian recapture of Honolulu is not beyond belief, though, as there are 2 Lancers within range of the city. If Kamehameha can manage to take Honolulu, the only Chilean unit nearby are the submarines, which, as you know, cannot directly attack cities. So Hawaii could keep Honolulu for at least the time being. The Lancers marched into the wreckage of Honolulu. They did not cheer, as one would expect them upon retaking their capital. The Hawaiians instead trod through the seats in deafening silence, witnessing the carnage that the murderous Chileans have brought upon their beloved city. Bodies lay in the streets. Mothers wept above their unmoving children. "What is there to fight for?" the general bellowed. This is the result, we must end this war." And the general began to round up the living. "We will evacuate all we can and bring them to Hilo. And then we will protect Hawaii until our last breaths." And the soldiers evacuated all that they could before the Blackfoot arrived. They held the city well, but the Blackfoot Navy were too powerful. They took the city from the Hawaiians, but by then Honolulu was nothing but a fresh carcass, a war zone, the ghost of the great city it once was. Suddenly, the Kimberley-Inuit War is in the forefront. Inuits' open borders with Vietnam and Australia have provided it with a direct route to the Kimberley capital of Massacre, and the two advanced destroyers are now laying siege to it. Suddenly, the war against Sri Lanka is of little importance. The Inuit offensive is even worse than expected, since there's virtually nowhere for Jandamara to send his units through in order to fend off the Inuit ships. Waikiki finally falls to the Chileans, and it's looking very bleak for Kamehameha. With no cities outside of the Hawaiian Islands, there's nowhere to take refuge if the Chile-Blackfoot coalition manages to finish them off. All of Hawaii seems sad. Even the baby-making has come to a halt. None of their cities have grown at all in this part. Chile needs to watch out as well. If they get the diplomatic penalty for eliminating Hawaii, it'll be open season for Brazil. Wow, you have to give the Sri Lankans credit. They made their way all the way to Austin to make their DOW worth something. Two privateers maneuvered their way through the Buccaneer and Inuit lands just to take a whack at Texas. Of course, two privateers will do next to nothing to hurt Texas, but damn, it makes you realize that some people really don't like Sam Houston. If only Benito could put his head on straight and take Austin, then freedom throughout the world could rest easy. The mind-twisting Henry here have-open borders parks of Australia now harbors an atomic bomb in Polynesia. With one atomic bomb and many more to come, the only question is, who will Parks use it on? Or are the Australian people too scared from the Maori bombing of Sydney to use the weapons? I honestly can't even come close to getting a read on Henry Parks. He's the one guy in the casino who check raises every hand, but still has a perfect poker face. Still no progress in the Afghan-Vietnamese war. Lahore is still protected by Mongol peacekeepers, and Kandahar has even begun to heal. Looking at the atomic bomb that the Trungs have placed in the front lines, I can't see that helping Vietnam too much. Any shot at coast in Lahore will hit Mongol-Tibetan targets, and they can't have that. Kandahar is a likely target as it is protected by units right now, so the Trunks can detonate one tile to the northwest of Kandahar, causing the blast to miss Vietnamese paratroopers while destroying 9 Afghan units and a Champa unit. Bonus points! Then they can send their paratroopers for an easy capture. Here's part 52's obligatory Boer slide. This time we showcase the Boer giant death robots. I count 4 on this slide, the backbone of this already insane army. There's a war unit on every single tile in this slide, and there are a few Ethiopian citadels in between Kurdislop and Awasa. And I hope for Holly's sake that those citadels aren't new, because Ethiopia probably still has a penalty for eliminating the Ayyubids, and a few citadels might tip Boer over the edge. And here we learn that these helicopters can't capture cities. I also find myself wondering what on earth is written in the Outlaw Civipedia article that requires 7 pages. TPang's note: install the Texas mod to find out. Kamehameha of Hawaii has just made peace with their favorite zombie messiah, Sitting Bull. An appropriate name, as the Sioux sits alone in the middle of North America, yet lead a DOW chain on the Buccaneers like a bull, I guess. We can see on this slide that Kahul remains undamaged, and the majority of the Chilean Navy are submarines, so the Hawaiians could still come out of this war yet. Their last 4 cities are still substantially sized, They wouldn't be in the worst shape ever. They're still down millions of people, though. Well, goddamn, Mr. Morgan. Just can't keep his finger off the trigger, can he? What a cruel irony it is preparing to fire nuclear weapons from a city that is still plagued with fallout. Remember, just a few parts ago when the Bucks were the protagonists of the Battle Royale? The hero? Yeah, now they're just as scary as the Inuit or Boers. Well, not really, but you get my point. It looks like Henry Parks has sent a task force to Honolulu. For what reasons, I don't know. But what I do know is that there isn't a single actual ship with fighting capabilities in that fleet. That's 11 great generals. If there was ever any part of me trying to figure out Henry Parks before, it's gone. He just shoved on the flop and now he's staring straight at me while I decide what to do. I fold, dude. I fold. Just take the damn pot. Jesus. Hey, dealer. Can I get a new table, please? So Australia takes Sir Jawahar Puna Koti. I assume that Sri Lanka had flipped it and that the ironclad popped in for a quick capture, but let me tell you, that is most definitely not the kind of help that Jandamara was looking for. As a result of Australia's help in the war, the Kimberley have lost a city and have gained none. Bravo! Also on this side, Sam Houston gets out of the one war that posed any threat to him, the one with Canada. Now Texas can enjoy the city-state of Austin until Mexico or the Inuit or the Bucks decide that taking Austin is advantageous to them. Sam Houston is the new Chairman Mao, I suppose. Kahului is already in the bread, and it's only been one turn. At this point, I believe it's entirely possible that Chile will take all of Hawaii, bearing Honolulu. A small Blackfoot fleet is coming up above Milani, and the Hawaiians' only defenses are a few carriers and a submarine. In fact, there are way too many Hawaiian carriers. They need some units that will actually attack other units, or they will have no chance. Our first real view of Europe this part, and it looks like Sweden is already poking the bear. 2 citadels straight towards Helsinki. Gudolfo Balsvis is a daring man. Finland is a huge power, as represented by their immense army in this slide. And Sweden still has epicest. For Caesar's sake, I say there aren't a whole lot of people who don't want Finland to take over Sweden, but Gustavus is walking the line. A look into Cabooses' drone fighter stockpile shows how absolutely stacked the Boers are in the air as well. This is just one city. Look at the others. 8 other cities with 10 units in them. That's like 80 units and 50-ish drones maybe? Drone fighters are as powerful as XCOMs. Just another thing to add to the world's long list of worries about the Boers. Following the Yakutsk example, Korea now has power armor infantry, the 4th civ by my count to have done so. This isn't a total surprise, given Sejong's civ being science-focused, but Korea isn't the civ that comes to mind when you think powerhouse. This view of the Korean Corps makes me realize that how even Korea is with Vietnam, Yakutia, and Australia. 4 technologically similar civs in close proximity, why don't we lock them all up in a room and see what happens? Oh man, I'm not even sure what this little dude did to deserve a timeout in a lake smack dab in the middle of the outback, but this Great War infantry is not moving, that's for sure. This poor guy is surrounded by Aussie units. If the unreadable Henry Parks ever decides to turn on Jandamara, this guy is a casualty. Another note, Australia is still filled with diggers. It seems like they've been around forever. I think it's about time for them to be technologically obsolete. Coast and Lahore sit unperturbed as usual, but Vietnam has made the breakthrough to Kandahar, and as soon as they can act again, that paratrooper is going to take the city. Taking Kandahar won't help with the capture of Coast and Lahore, but it provides a direct route to Kabul and the rest of Afghanistan. This is the breakthrough that the Trung sisters have been so patiently waiting for. Now we can sit back and watch the Marasas Hotak scramble to protect his core. Mali enters the atomic era, a welcome boost in their current state. If only they managed that 40 turns ago before Henry Morgan bombed 3 of their cities to shit. Oddly enough, this slide shows that the Bucks and Mali have open borders, with several Malayan ships in Tombochu's harbor, and infantry in Bamko and Sam and Gao. This could be good for Masamali if he has a new friend in Morgan. However, I wager that Henry Morgan is just as likely to backstab Masamusa than to help him out. The Hawaiian island of Kalihu joins the casualties of the Blackfoot and Chilean War. As the Chilean fleet shifts their focus towards Hilo, which is still one of the largest cities on the planet, 4 Blackfoot ships grow near to the makeshift capital of Milani, and Kamehameha can only hope that he can sue for peace successfully before he loses any more cities. A Hawaiian armada is non-existent, with only carriers and a grand total of 1 privateer left to protect their islands. The Orange Army advances yet again with the addition of the Boer arsenal ships. The arsenal ship is an upgrade to the missile cruiser, able to carry 4 missiles as well as being able to melee attack with the power of an XCOM. Seeing all those future world units makes me want Agent M back in Pretoria to see what may be about to face the Orange Wrath. As the naval range unit tree shows, the arsenal ship is a combination of a battleship and missile cruiser. Even adding on to the 100 melee combat it already has, there's another 125 range strength. A fleet of these ships would be absolutely unbeatable. A mutual peace deal with the Inuit helps out Gendamara greatly, as he can now focus his units on Sri Lanka. It looks like the Ice Sheet fleet only managed to take Massacre down by 1 population, but it's surely the Inuit war was a nuisance to Gendamara. Now think about the next slide while I take a minute to enjoy the Australian city of Golabaro Milibari. The Sri Lankan defense of Colombo is thus far successful, but Paramarikambahu has a considerably smaller fleet than the combined units of Australia and Kimberley. Colombo is just as low on HP as Sri Lanka can afford it to be right now, and Sri Lanka needs to worry about what will happen if that digger and artillery can find a foothold on Ceylon, while Gali is very undefended right now. The Kpiozoa War rages into the far north, where both sides continue to expend unit after unit. Thousands of fine soldiers dying for no real reason. With the only way in and out of turns, Tajin Darkan has nowhere to place his offensive, and so unit after unit clogs the hole and is bombarded by the cities until it perishes. There are no free tiles in the city to drop paratroopers. The only sea route to Sibir is being blocked by Kekkonen, and the only 2 units who can pass through the mountains are helicopters. That's all Trigger really needs, 2 or 3 helicopter gunships to go and take on Kpiozoa. That is, if the gunships could even capture cities. In the meantime, the local Yakutian communication arrays blast out the cartoon propaganda show Saka Universe, where in Sibir nukes the Yakuts so much that it causes a massive hole in their region of the world. Shut-in Temujin has laid his trust in the one person who could come out top and face off with any other nation. Paul Kruger's Boer units have spilled into Mongolia, including a drone UAV, one of the many future world units that stock the Boer arsenal. As long as Genghis Khan keeps building citadels into the formerly Chinese-Korean land, it'd be good to find one more ally, preferably one who's a bit closer to them. The 4 citadels right by Shanghai are especially worrisome, and Sejong's 11 air units in Shanghai and Beijing suggest that he's prepared for a Mongolian offensive if it comes. The Blackfoot holdings in the northern Pacific Ocean look like a juicy target for the Inuit, and with their advanced destroyers to Crowfoot's caravels and privateers, resistance would be nearly futile for the Blackfoot. Unfortunately for Crowfoot, the Inuit seem to be disinterested and are mostly chummy with their buffalo neighbors, so such conquest will have to wait. Until old Nick gets hungry again, that is. Nobody likes Yehunik when he's hungry. Sam Houston can vouch for that. Also on this slide, the next 2 votes in the United Nations are for luxury bans of crab and sugar. So if handy resource items let us know that the Blackfoot Islands rely on crab for food, with 3 sources in those 2 cities. The loss of 4 happiness might not be so much, but these cities may be losing valuable food. A rare look at the Buccaneer Corps shows us that the Bucks will also be in bad shape if those votes pass, as sugar is an abundant resource in the Caribbean. The loss of at least 3 sugar tiles would deprive the Bucks of 3 food, 9 gold per turn, and at least 1 million desserts a year. A closer look at the pirate fleet reveals that there's more than half of it consists of carriers, with a few powerful ships surrounding the core. This could be a real bad sight if the Buccaneer Navy isn't as strong as we thought, or it could mean that the real Navy is stowed away somewhere else in their vast empire. The Blackfoot theme of Part 52 continues as the Crowfoot enters the Information Era. The unit count in their territory has grown somewhat since we last saw them on Slide 1, and the Inuit land to the north looks eerily barren by comparison. I may sound like a broken record, but the Blackfoot-Inuit War would be highly enjoyable. Even more so if another American civilization like Canada or the Buccaneers decided to join in the battle. Those Inuit citadels down in Corpus Christi make me wonder if Mexico would be the perfect distraction. Back to the Hawaiian War, where a lost Buccaneer trireme that has been hanging ten in Hawaii for millennia observes Bernardo's scattered navy, with submarines making up the majority of the Chilean ships in the Hawaiian territory. A damaged Escuadra Nacional bombards Qualacona alone, with the only incoming Chilean units capable of taking or damaging a city are two battleships and a near-dead Escuadra Nacional. The Blackfoot Task Force to the north still hasn't reached Milani, and with any luck for Kamehameha, both offensives will grind to a halt very soon. Kamehameha needs to use his time to build more naval units to defend the remnants of his once great empire. The Australian offensive of Colombo is in full swing. Colombo is in the red, Gallia is in the green, and the siege doesn't show any signs of stopping. My Rocky reference earlier has kind of flopped because it looks like Rocky called in Muhammad Ali in to take over the fight. The Kimberley fleet is gone, and Australia have completely taken over this war. With the knowledge that the war is now in good hands, Jendamar has shifted his attention to ending all of his other wars, and the small island nation will be satisfied with the outcome of the Sri Lankan War. Sri Lanka, on the other hand, are very dissatisfied with the war, one that they started. Even before Henry Parkes got involved, the Sri Lankan Navy was already being pummeled. Paramarihubu will be lucky to keep all of his mainland cities. This view of the peaceful side of Afghanistan provides no hope for those subscribed to the graveyard of empires. With a few scattered units and a small navy, the Afghans have now been having a decent run in the Battle Royale, having played a part in the downfall of the Timurids, as well as staying on part in the tech game until recently. Their Antarctican colonies will prevent them from being eliminated for some time, but the full power of the Vietnamese ground troops may cripple them enough to join the list of doomed civilization. In the former Hunnic territories, it isn't easy to distinguish between the Finnish and Siberian territories, what with over the dozen of Finnish paratroopers enjoying the vacation in the tropical Siberian southwest. Not a lot of action from the two top 10 civs lately. Kekkonen did finish off the Mughals not too long ago, but Kuchan Khan has been very quiet for a long time if you discount the war in progress with the Yakutia. We can only hope that this long stretch of peace and quiet in Sibir will end with an invasion of Mongolia, or a fun backstab into Finland, or at least a quick contest of the lowly Armenia or the USSR. On the bright side, Sibir's inactivity allows for the remaining Romans to enjoy a nice swim in the Black Sea. Seamus stood on the mast of his boat, gazing out at the desert sunset that lay before him. It was a beautiful sight, a pink and orange sky, no clouds at all, not another human being for miles. Seamus smiled as he finished off his pint. It's just like Ireland, he sighed to himself. Of course, it was nothing like Ireland, but Seamus didn't know that. All Seamus knew about Ireland came from the stories his father told him, and his grandfather before that. Of course, they didn't know anything about Ireland either, because all they knew of Ireland came from the stories they heard. For no Irishman has lived in Ireland for centuries. Seamus pulled a Guinness out of the cooler beside him. He took a swig and then yelled to nobody in particular. Once a scout, always a scout. Seamus listened as his voice echoed off into the mountains behind him. Lord Nebuchadnezzar's faithful servant Ishtar transmit home to the sub with news of a Yakut plot against the Blackfoot. It's good of Ishtar to finally report back to us, but any Yakut-Blackfoot war isn't likely to have much of an outcome, given the Yakut's one-tile passageway into the open ocean, and the Australian units that are blocking that way. Off to our right of the slide, we can see the Hawaii character has made its way to Ahikakakik and even done some damage to the Blackfoot privateer surrounding it. Whether or not we get another look at Hawaii before the end of this part, I think it's safe to say that the Hawaiian resistance is wearing quite thin. Colombo's last defenses are falling and its health is almost all gone. The placement of a Finnish machine gun, a Sri Lankan battleship, and a Sri Lankan artillery in front of the city will keep it alive for at least one more turn, but the entrance to the Sri Lankan capital into Henry Park's maritime empire is imminent. Galley, Colombo's twin city, is still holding strong for the time being, but it won't be too long before the Wabagoms sweep over Galley too. Some Kimberley naval units have snuck into the middle of the Armada after all, so it's not beyond belief that a Kimberley battleship could sail in and swipe Colombo from under Park's nose. Here we have arrived at the last slide before the info addict takes over the spotlight, and the Trung sisters have yet to capture Kandahar despite their breakthrough a few turns ago. Taking a look at the Siberian citadel next to Lahore and the infantry by coast, I can't help but wonder if maybe Kuchum Khan might declare war on Afghanistan and take Lahore and coast for himself. It wouldn't take much, just one infantry to walk into coast and one helicopter gunship to stroll into Lahore. Meanwhile, the Roman ballista is enjoying the springtime in a lake right outside the Judaism at Judaism border, its men flinging rocks into the shimmering water. "Pow!" says Salius. "Take that, Leonidas, that'll teach you for messing with the Roman Empire." He laughs maniacally, till his laughter fades, and then morphs into the cries of sorrow for his lost homeland. The slaughtered millions of Honolulu eliminate the Hawaiian Party Empire from the one list they were prominent in, and the Boers may be having a food shortage because they've lost 7 million people since the last part. Australia takes over their spot at first, boosting by almost 10 million. Other changes are the Inuit passing Iceland and Chile jumping from 12th to 10th in the capture of 2 Honolulu cities. Looking at the other side of the population spectrum, the Japanese city-state of Osaka is nearly as populous as modern-day Tokyo, with 10 million residents. Mansa Musa of Mali has done some rebuilding since the nuclear disaster, growing by 2 million since the last part. The only city to change hands on the top 12 this part was Sir Jayawardenepuna Kotte from Sri Lanka to Australia, taking their city count from 91 to 92 and their average population per city to nearly 2 million. Iceland's lead in average population with 4 million, however. The Boers military has not stopped going as 18,000 more soldiers have joined the Orange Army since we last checked. The civ with the highest percentage of its population in the military is Brazil, surprisingly, with 3%, which is absolutely ridiculous. For scale, the United States military is only 0.4% of its population, and North Korea's is 5.7%. A slide with the military manpower of some of the eliminated civs shows that there are 13,000 Ashanti pikemen wallowing in the lake of the Boer heartland and 21,000 Burmese riflemen floating off the coast of Afghanistan and 10,953 Irish scouts accompanying Seamus in his lake in Mexico. Taking a look at the Sioux up top of the list, their military manpower makes almost 6% of their population. Way to militarize, Jesus! Paul Kruger's Boer scientists are decades ahead of everyone else, possessing at least 2 Future World units and giant death robots, more than any other civilization. The Inuit sit at 80, and the Kuti sit with his power armored infantry is 9 whole techs behind the Inuit. He must be rushing military tech because he was the 3rd leader to possess such a unit. Sri Lanka hides just off this list, only 2 techs behind the civilization that may very well take their capital next part, and the Swedes' 66 techs make them wonder why on earth Gustavus still has at least a dozen Sakapalitas near Stockholm. The science output is a different story from the technologies, as Gustavus Adolphus seems to have made a jump forward in the tech rankings, as he is near double the output of Brazil, who are even with them in tech. Ethiopia, surprisingly, in 13th. Here's a slide that we don't see very often, the social policies adopted for each civilization. The surprise leader here is Finland with 2 more policies than the Boers. However, it is not as surprising as you may think, given Kekkonen's UA, which takes a quarter of Allied civs' happiness and uses it as culture. The bonus is doubled if the other Civ has another ideology. I'm not sure what Kekonen's ideology is, but even without the double, that's a huge boost in culture. Sri Lanka in 7th is a surprise, as well as Afghanistan in 8th. The religions of the world are shown here. None of them were born from a particularly successful empire, including 3 eliminated civs and 2 city-states. 9,175 citizens are religious. I tried to calculate how many in real life that would be, but I got a number well over 100 trillion, and that just doesn't seem to fit right. Here's the religion map, and as you can see, most of the planet has adopted some sort of religion. I can see that some people are losing their religion on the border of Afghanistan and Vietnam, and I'm sure you can guess why that would be. Missionaries are having trouble finding people accepting of the religious beliefs down in the harsh climates of Antarctica, and it looks like the Ayyubid party prophet was able to balance Islam and Judaism enough in Divin for religious controversy to erupt. Anyhow, this is the last stop of the Battle Royale Express, where when your name is called, please kindly come and get your weapon and leave. It has been an absolute ball being your narrator for this part. Believe me, I've enjoyed writing all of this, and enjoy the rest of your day.